Peace, peace, peace. I am Phillip Roundtree, and not sure what is happening, but you are tuned into the July 27th edition of Rhetorically Speaking. Shouts to those of you who are tuned in on Facebook Live. Shout out to those of you who are tuned in on YouTube Live. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. I'm just trying to share this video to Facebook right quick, so just bear with me. So then I can really get into it. So yeah, shout out to you all who are tuned in on Facebook Live. Props to those who are watching on YouTube Live at Quadify LLC. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. While you're in the midst of hitting that subscribe button, I need y'all to do me a favor, right? I need y'all to do me a favor. We gonna get it started just like this.
Donations.
Didn't pop up. What's happening here? Yo, I have no idea what's going on right now and why this stuff ain't working. But all right, I was trying to get y'all some Umar, right? I was trying to get y'all some donations, and gifts, right? Because it can't just be donations; it has to be gifts as well. Because in all of this stuff is tax deductible. You can write it off. So if you're feeling compelled to donate to a brother, Cash App, #, Quadify LLC. I'm always appreciative of those who do look out and send a couple dollars, because again, this is I love doing this on a nightly basis, but it's labor. It's a labor of love, but nonetheless, it is labor, and I'm gonna continue to do it whether I receive any donations or not. I don't necessarily know if I should have said that, because now you might not give any donations, but no, I'm always appreciative for the love that's shared. So we got a dope show on tap for y'all today. We're gonna have some conversations about baseball and how what's happening in baseball right now today, like right at this moment. So when I say right now, that's not hyperbolic by any means. It's like legit. Things are changing by the minute in baseball, and how that reflects on what we're doing as a society when it comes to education, in particular, opening schools up. We also going to have a conversation about Donald Trump saying no. Donald Trump saying no to going to John Lewis's memorial. And I'm going to talk about why that is a sign of respect from Donald Trump. One of the few times that I have respected him throughout his presidency. And last but not least, we're going to talk about this new COVID vaccine that seemingly is coming to market within the next 6 to 8 months, made by Moderna. And so I want to get your perspective on whether you will be participating not only in the trials that's taking place, but if you will indeed get the vaccine. And we're going to talk about the historical implications for why black folks don't necessarily participate, why they don't participate in trials. So shout out to you, Sabina. Thanks for tuning in. So this first story, again, it's happening by the minute. It's going down. So unless you've been under a rock, I guess that might be one of my favorite phrases to say now, because you might not be paying any attention to baseball. But again, the implications on the overall population it's large. So today it came out that between 13 and 14 Florida Marlin officials and players tested positive for COVID-19. Guess who they were playing? Yup, the Philadelphia Phillies. The Philadelphia Phillies. So they tested positive throughout this weekend here in Philadelphia. So they played a 3-game set, and we knew something was fishy on Friday when the starting pitcher for the Miami Marlins, he was scratched because he tested positive for COVID. Now, some information I think might be important is that they played a scrimmage against the Atlanta Braves in Atlanta. I believe it was in Atlanta on Wednesday. And we know how between Atlanta and Florida, they are hotbeds for COVID-19. And so they scratched the player from playing on Friday. They had the 3-game series. Lo and behold, today we find out that between 13 and 14 people within the Miami Marlins organization tested positive. Okay. We recognize, and if you've been following me on social media, you know that I have been against the restart of sports unless you're going to do it like the not Major League Baseball. You're going to do it like the NBA. You're going to do it like Major League Soccer, and you're going to do it like the NHL, where there's a bubble, right? If you go out of the bubble, like we see with Lou Williams and his chicken wings from Magic City, then you will be quarantined for Lou Williams' sake. It's quarantined for 10 days, but you cannot leave the bubble. You have to get permission to leave the bubble. And what has that resulted in? The NBA had minimal people testing positive for the virus. The NHL had minimal people testing positive for the virus. Major League Soccer had players from a team test positive for the virus, FC Dallas, and they said, "Oh, you got to go. You can't even play." Right? You can't even play. So even though ethically I'm against the idea of sports being played right now, why? Because all of these athletes are being tested day in and day out, some of them multiple times a day. They're getting their results within a few hours. And here we have the general public, where Quest Diagnostics is saying that it's taking up to 2 weeks for results to get back. When I had my test about 2 weeks ago, it took me about 5 days to get my results back. And so in the grand scheme of things, yes, we recognize that capitalism and having money affords you the opportunity to be able to get tested and get results sooner than the general public. But again, optically speaking, it's not a good look, right? That's not going to endear you to the general public, who you are asking for money, right? You're asking the general public to invest not only their time, their energy, but you're asking them to invest their money into your sport. And so I look at these organizations with the side eye. Like, yo, I want to be able to get tested every day so I can go and live my life, right? So I can go and get a haircut, because my hairline's starting to come back a little bit. But unfortunately, the case is that's not realistic. And so I said, okay, you know what? I get it, right? I get it. I don't believe that sports is a necessity to life, right? It's a luxury. It always has been a luxury, even though it's big business and it brings in so much money to the economy and people make their livings from sports. It's still not a necessity. And so with that being said, I said, okay, cool. But here comes Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball, they have a 101-page rule book with regards to COVID-19. But what happened yesterday was nowhere. It happened yesterday and today is nowhere in the rule book. They have no idea what to do when a player tests positive, or not necessarily one player, but there's an outbreak like there was with the Miami Marlins. Adding insult to injury, and shows you how careless and how poor the leadership is. Several players were aware that they had that folk had tested positive within the organization, and so they had in a group text, and we know how group text can be. In the group text, the players made the decision to play. So they knew that people had tested positive, not just the one player, the starter that was scratched on Friday, but other players on the team had tested positive. And they had a conversation amongst one another and said, yo, you up? What you doing? Yo, yeah. You know you tested positive, right? Word? What y'all think? Y'all think we should play? Yeah, we gonna go head out there. Again, nothing in the rule book to say how these situations should be handled. Why didn't that information come from management? That decision. Why didn't that decision come from Major League Baseball? Again, poor leadership, and we see this nationally when we talk about how y'all President Trump has been dealing with the coronavirus, right? Thankfully, in certain states, we've had leadership like Governor Wolf, like Governor Cuomo, who said, all right, listen, we're going to shut the studio down. I don't care what's being threatened coming from the White House, but we have to do this. And so now here we are. Here we are. And when I first heard about it and I started thinking, the first thing that came to my mind was, there's no way in hell school can open up. There's no way in hell that school can open up in the fall. And I'm talking about elementary education. We're talking about, secondary ed, higher education. There is no way. And the reason is, here we have multimillionaires, at worst $100,000, right? Who make their living by playing baseball. They have every incentive to isolate themselves because they're not in the bubble. So to be mindful, they don't have to go to the local grocery store to get food. They could get hotel food. They can literally stay in their rooms and just play baseball. Because again, they lose out. If they do not play, they do not get paid, right? And so let's say they were on their best behaviors. Their best behavior. They're relying on not only their families to be on their best behavior, right? So their girlfriend, their boyfriends, their kids. That's asking a lot of them. But again, if you're 100,000, if you're a multimillionaire baseball player, your partner not necessarily is working, right? Your kids aren't in school. Your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your partner, they might go shopping, right? Where they're around other people. But honestly, they don't have to. They can literally stay in the house, stay in the hotel, and not go anywhere. Their kids aren't in camp, kids aren't in school. So it makes you think, if they're susceptible and this outbreak has happened, what about those kids, those families, those teachers who do not have the luxury to just sit, right? To just sit in the house. Parents have to go to work. Parents have to go grocery shopping. You never know. Kids might just go outside and play to get some exercise and come in contact with it. You might be walking down the street and somebody's not adhering. They might not have a mask on. They might catch it. Teachers have to food shop. Teachers have to they're interacting with people, right? Because they're not living their life in a silo. And so what you're asking them to do, you're asking people without the resources. They're not getting tested daily. Like these baseball players have the luxury of getting tested daily. All of these athletes. Teachers don't. Students don't. Families don't. Because their results will come back 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. At that point, what are we looking at? We're looking at mass outbreaks within educational systems across the nation. So it's impossible. It's impossible to have this expectation. And we're not even talking about the idea of putting your life on the line, right? Because that's what you're doing. That's what these baseball players are doing. That's what these athletes are doing. They're putting their life out, their lives on the line. In the athlete's perspective, they're doing it for entertainment. For entertainment and a paycheck to maintain the lifestyle. That's why it's so hard for many of us to have some type of sympathy for the athlete. You don't play and you don't get your $5 million. I'm sorry to hear that. But we recognize that there's a disconnect that exists between the layperson and the athlete. But when we talk about the teachers, when we talk about the families and the students, they're putting their lives on the line for a virus that we still have no idea how it truly operates. We have no idea how long it continues to linger on surfaces. Some people say hours, some people say weeks, depending upon who you ask. Do we have enough Lysol spray? Do we have enough disinfectant if kids were to go in the classroom? We're talking about kids. They can't. Some of them can't tie their shoes. They need help getting dressed. They need help with homework. And this is from kindergarten to 12th grade. They're impulsive. They lack the ability to think critically. I can tell you that from being in the gym today. And within the last 3 out of 4 days, I have been pissed in the gym. Yes, you have some older folk who are walking around with their nose out because we recognize that the mask is supposed to be over the nose and mouth. But these teenagers who are in high school, walking around without a mask, laughing and joking with one another in groups of like 6 and 7 in the gym. And the thing about this no mask thing is, man, do not come in my area. Do not come near me. Because I don't think we necessarily take account for how many people have been punched in the mouth because they've been near people without a mask. I don't care if it's a white supremacy mask. You do you. You be you. But as long as you got a mask on, you good in my book. You're good in my book, right? So what we're doing is we're asking individuals who don't have the ability to educate themselves. They clearly lack some fundamental understanding, right? Because isn't that why they go to school? They go to school to learn. They go to school to learn. But yet you're telling them, listen, this is how this has to be. What's going to happen to the first kid that try to cut in line? Because, we all got to be first, right? You remember that from childhood. I got to be first in line. So you trying to maneuver your way in. Your mask all coming down. You know how snotty nosed kids are, right? Trickling down their cheek. We understand how this goes. And so if we're saying that billion dollar institutions cannot get this right, even though I think teachers and some people in administration are smarter than those individuals who are running, for example, Major League Baseball, how can we truly expect this to happen? There's so many variables that cannot be controlled for. There's so many variables that cannot be controlled for. And so to ask anybody to go back to school is criminal. If a teacher goes back to school, I'm not going to look at them as being some type of martyr. I'm going to look at you as you're an idiot. You're a fool. And granted, I understand that sometimes your hands are tied. Right? Your hands are tied. But if you do not put self first in this situation, and I'm talking about, listen, you might got to file a lawsuit. You might got to file a grievance. We need these teachers unions to say, hold up. Nah, this not happening. Especially when we learn that little Barron Trump, when his school already said, nope, straight online. We're not even playing this game. So if the president not sending his son, what makes you think I'm sending my daughter? It's no way. Because I know how I give it up. I know I'm not going out places. I know my daughter is a homebody for the most part. Except her little trips to the beach where it's like 0 people on the beach. But I don't know what her little friends are doing. I don't know what their parents are doing. I don't know what these teachers are doing. I don't know what these principals, I don't know what people are doing. That's where we are. We have no idea what behaviors individuals are engaging in. And so it's foolish. Again, foolish to think that somehow this school year, and I'm talking about the entire school year, that the entire school year will take place. But I'll show a little grace and I'll say the first 2 semesters, first 2 marking periods, which is from September to about December. I don't see how they're taking place. We're going to see what some of the comments are saying. When it comes to the Miami Marlins, I just came across the TV that their next two games have been canceled, including tonight. Well, not including tonight's game. So these three games have been canceled. Word is that they might cancel all baseball games for tomorrow. And you've had months if you're Major League Baseball or the NFL to really put in place protocol to work through this. But again, it's so ridiculous to think that you have however many baseball teams, somewhere between 28 and 32, to think that they're just going to be traveling on planes. They're going to be dealing with all types of room service. They're going to be seeing their families here and there, their friends here and there. And that nobody was going to come in contact with COVID. And that it wouldn't cause a mass outbreak. Now, of equal concern that now I'm just thinking of is the Miami Marlins are still here in Philadelphia. So they're getting food service. Let's say they wanted to take a trip to a local bar. Some of these folk who've tested positive. Now what are they doing? They're spreading it to individuals here in Philadelphia who have to go home to their families. Next thing you know, the Miami Marlins could have started an outbreak here in Philadelphia. And when we talk about the negligence of legislators to even allow this to take place, I don't know if you can file lawsuits, injunctions to stop these things from happening in our city. But again, this is what happens when you open up, right? When you go to the green phase, it makes it more difficult to legislate. Which once was mandatory masks that individuals had to wear, now they're optional. Think about it, the places that you go, where you see people without them. And so nobody takes in consideration that the Miami Marlins could have started an outbreak in Philadelphia. Because if you watched the game yesterday, you saw there were players playing without masks. You saw at times they were within 6 feet of one another. They were engaging, having conversations. Maybe about 2 or 3 of them had masks on. Like, was that not in the 101-page rule book? And so now here we are. Here we are. The Miami Marlins could be the proverbial monkey from outbreak for the city of Philadelphia. Let's see what else y'all saying. Seeing idiots without complete buffoonery. The families have to support the teachers union if they take that stance. Enjoying your TED Talk. No, Alicia, this isn't a TED Talk. If you want to see my TED Talk, go see my TED Talk. You dig me? Phil Roundtree, Black Mental Health Matters. Go check it out. Yeah, Jamel, the families have to support the teachers union if they take that stance. Again, they have to. But even if they don't, because we recognize why certain families will not. Because they don't have the luxury to support them. Because then they're going to have to start looking at okay, who's going to watch my child care? Who's going to watch my child if they're not in school? And now I'm an essential worker and we're starting to see businesses come back. So no, I'm not necessarily thinking that the teachers need the support of the parents. Yes, that would be a beautiful thing because the more you have, we know that numbers matter. But at bare minimum, teachers saying, no, I'm cool. Now, if that breaches the contract, I have no idea because I don't know what's, if they're accounting for pandemics in teacher contracts and how to operate. Alicia says, so now parents need to take the initiative that if kids cannot go back to school, they need to make sure their kids are logging online to learn. Again, yes, ideally, in a perfect world, in a utopia, yes, parents will be, quote unquote, responsible. But even the most responsible parents might not be making sure that their child is logging in on a day-to-day basis. Why? Because they have work. Why? Because they might not value education from their perspective, but they recognize that it's important for their kids. There's so many dynamics that come into play when we talk about families and parents, caregivers. Because I don't want to just use the term parents, because we recognize that individuals who are taking care of our children aren't necessarily their biological parents. They're not their adoptive parents. They might be playing a parent role, I guess you can say that. But again, this is where we have conversations and we talk about how poor the educational system is and has been. Like, it makes me think, like, we've been saying the education system, I know for here in Philadelphia, has been poor for the last 30 years. Well, some of these parents who are products of the Philadelphia school district, again, don't necessarily recognize the importance of education because they're a product of poor education. Again, it doesn't take much intelligence to have a child, right? Sabina says opening the schools will cause more outbreak. Look how people are now. Again, and this is where we are, right? This is where we are when we talk about the outbreaks that are taking place. Again, I don't have the answers, Sway. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have the answers for that. This is a really real we playing a guessing game. We've been playing a guessing game for months now. We've been playing a guessing game of how to approach this pandemic, the COVID-19 outbreak, for months now. We see so many professionals say that if we wear a mask, if everybody wore a mask for 4 to 6 weeks, that will lessen the outbreaks that have taken place. And I probably can believe in that, right? Because why? We've seen what these mandatory mask, the implementation of mandatory mask wearing, like here in Pennsylvania, what that has done to our numbers, what it's done for New York City, who was the epicenter of the outbreak, but they put in measures that help curb those numbers. Jamel says, how are people defining homeschooling? A lot of people are saying that it is a plan. What does it look like? Again, that's why we pay people the big bucks, Jamel. We pay people the big bucks to figure out what homeschooling is. Homeschooling can be like what my daughter did, where the teachers were either in the classroom actually at school, or they were in the home, and my daughter would log on and watch through Google Meet, and she would be taught that way. Homeschooling could be what I'll be teaching, the style I'll be teaching in the fall is where it might not necessarily be interaction with the teacher, where you get your list of assignments to do for the week and you have to turn them in. Where you hope that if it's younger children and older children, that whoever the caregiver is might have some level of involvement. It might mean going to so-and-so's house who's willing to teach for, charging like Umar Johnson, charging $300, right? Charging $300 a student to teach them. It can manifest itself in many ways. I think that's where I think all options need to be on the table, but the one option that should not be on the table is students and teachers being physically in a classroom together. That should just not be on the table. Let's see. So with that being said, we're going, unless y'all, let me see. Outbreak comes from kids mostly. I am in medical. Well, again, there's different information. There's different science, research that have come out. I think the fact that we all can be asymptomatic carriers, right? We all can be asymptomatic says that we all can carry this COVID-19 and not know. And again, that there isn't one particular group who's a carrier necessarily, but we know that there are groups who are more susceptible to the harsh realities of COVID-19. So we're gonna keep the party going and get into this next conversation. If I can bring it up, let's see. We're gonna be talking about y'all president, man. You know what I mean? We about to get into this conversation about y'all president. So I'm gonna play this clip from Trump that he said earlier today. What? I'm not sure why this isn't playing. Hold on, let me see.
Plan and pay your respect to Congressman Lewis, either today or tomorrow on the Capitol.
No, I won't be going. No.
I'm gonna play that one more time just in case you didn't see it.
Plan and pay your respect to Congressman Lewis, either today or tomorrow on the Capitol.
No, I won't be going. No.
My man. And that's all I could say. That's all I could say to Trump, right? My man. Will you be going to pay your respects to John Lewis at the Capitol? No, I'm good. No, I'm not going. I'm okay. I'm good. And you know what? I'll say this is one of the few times that I can say I respect President Trump's decision. I respect it. I think this is one of the biggest compliments that he could pay to John Lewis by not going to show his respects to him at the Capitol. You know who else I think should join him? All the Republicans who in essence gutted the Voting Rights Act of 1965 within the last 10 to 15 years, who've been truly working to gut John Lewis's prized possession, which he got his ass kicked for. Right? He got his ass kicked for not only the Civil Rights Act, but the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And so when we talk about Marco Rubio and the governor of Alaska, who erroneously posted pictures of them with Elijah Cummings saying, "Rest in peace, John Lewis," these individuals do not need to fake the love, right? No fake love for John Lewis. Be true to who you are. Because what you're doing is you're smiling in his face and you're talking ish about him behind your back. That's what's taking place, right? I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm some big historian on the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I think this is one of the privileges that I get when I do show Rhetorically Speaking, and I talk about different historical. I have different historical conversations because it forces me to do the research. It forces me to learn. It forces me to think critically. So then I can be able to say, you know what? No, Marco Rubio and the majority of the Republican Party should not show up. Because this isn't just a disagreement amongst two people, right? About where we should build a Walmart. No, we can agree to disagree with that. No, what the Voting Rights Act of 1965 did was strip away racism from the rights to vote, right? So we're talking about literacy tests. We're talking about extensive identification. We're talking about regulatory regulations related to registering people to vote. This is what the Voting Rights Act of 1965 did, right? If you're an Asian individual, you should be upset, right? You should be upset because John Lewis fought for you. He fought for you. Why? So if you speak Mandarin, if you speak Japanese, that you can have a ballot in your native language. Because again, that wasn't the case. You had to know English to be able to vote, right? So we're talking about the historical disenfranchisement of racial minorities, right? And so what took place in 2013, and again, I'm not going to bore you with the details and the specifics, but as we know, we hear people talk about it made it harder to vote, right? It's made it harder to vote. Because what it did was, in essence, it said, you know what? Instead of there being you having to go to the federal government to get permission to do certain things, no, states, y'all can do whatever y'all want to do with regards to voting. And so we know in states where there's typically a Republican governor, Republican leadership who want to suppress people's right to vote, they'll pull out all the stops, right? So they'll try to limit early voting and registration. They'll require voters to show photo ID and purge voter rolls, right? Which disproportionately affect people of color. And so that's what happened. These Republican individuals who all voted for this to take place back in 2013. And it was one specific provision that allows all of this to take place, right? And then even when the House voted, because we know the House is Democrat led, to reinstitute a lot of the legislation, a lot of the verbiage from the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it went through. But every single Republican but one voted against it. But yet you're going to go and say, yo, I'm sorry, John Lewis. I'm sorry you died. I'm sorry you're out of here. And that's why I say I can appreciate Trump. Because if you're going to lean into your white supremacy, lean into it. Lean into it 100%. Be you. Be who you are. And that's clearly what he's doing, right? We've seen over the past few months, and we can say over his entire presidency, but especially within the last few months, he's stoked the flames of racial and ethnic fires, right? And so by him going to see John Lewis and say, or by saying he was a great American, we know that goes against the white supremacist mindset in space that he's often operated from. And so I'm thankful that he's not going. That energy isn't needed there. That energy isn't needed there. And I hope the rest of the Republicans, I hope they follow suit. But again, we know that this a pony show, right? Everything is done for the optics. They gonna go. They might as well take some pictures with the deuces up, right, at the Capitol, at the funeral, and then post it to the gram, because that's all this is. This is photo ops. So then, when somebody else dies that look like Elijah Cummings and John Lewis, and don't get me wrong, them Negroes look alike. They look alike. But Marco Rubio can't be the one to mix them up. The governor of Alaska can't be the one to mix it up. Nah, y'all can't do that. Y'all don't get that type of leeway. And so again, I respect Trump for not showing up. Let's see what y'all talking about. Trump stayed true to character. Yeah, I'm so glad that piece of stink did not go. Saying it was Republican, there was enough disrespect in the room. Oh, McConnell spoke. I didn't know McConnell spoke. I had no idea that took place. Again, right? We know John Lewis was for people. He was for disenfranchised and marginalized people across the ethnic spectrum. And just today, Mitch McConnell and the Republicans come out and say, nah, that $600 not going to do. It's not going to work. We're going to drop it to $200. We're going to drop it to $200. No, we need to put some things in place to stop people from getting fat and lazy. Because people should always want to work. Because that's the deal in a white supremacy, capitalistic, patriarchal society, in the words of Bell Hooks. There are the bourgeoisie and the proletariats. And that's why I laugh when I see people complaining about individuals who are benefiting from this $600 per week. They making the working poor get mad at the poor. Like, who does that? Right? Meanwhile, they sitting eating fat appetizing. They just chilling. But they want poor folk to be mad at poor folk. Or tell you what you should be doing with your $600 a week. Yo, you should be starting a business. If Rise and Grind, Twitter, social media don't get out of my face, I gotta survive. Some of us, that's why I'm not mad at some people who scamming for the 600. This might be the closest folk get to reparations. You know what I'm talking about? This might be the closest we get to reparations. Getting a little $7,000, $8,000 out the government and not having to work. But don't be mad at the next poor man because you got to go into work, because you're considered essential personnel. There are other individuals who you need to have this conversation with. And you might need to make some harsh decisions in your life. Right? But again, the poor fighting the poor is never it. It's never it. Let's see what y'all saying. He was after the opening prayer. Sheesh. Again, opening. Listen, again, but we understand how politics go. This is a part of the game that we play, right? So we're going to see individuals who hate Republicans. We're going to see Democrats at Mitch McConnell's funeral. I'm sure there were Democrats at some of the worst Republicans throughout history. I'm sure there were Democrats at George Wallace's funeral, paying their quote-unquote respects. I think the black ones that was there was just making sure the mup was dead. You get what I'm saying? So again, I'm with it. I'm all the way with it. And so we're going to get ready to get into this third and final story. And I really want to get your opinion on this, right? And so this third and final story is about Moderna and their COVID vaccine that is now entering phase 3, which means it is one step closer to being available for the general public. They're going to need 30,000 people to participate in this trial of all ethnic backgrounds. So to date, this vaccine, they've been given almost $1 billion in government funding, right? And it'll be tested in 89 U.S. sites. And I'm not going to get into the particulars of it. It uses ribonucleic acid. I'm glad I got that off top. RNA, I didn't pay much attention in biology and chemistry class, but I do know what ribonucleic acid is. I think that's RNA anyway. Don't quote me on that. And so if everything goes right, the results from the trial can be here as early as October. And what they're looking for is a 60% effective rate in preventing COVID-19. And this is coming straight from Dr. Fauci, right? Dr. Fauci is my homeboy. Dr. Fauci is my homeboy. So he's saying they need at least 60%, right? And so again, and I think Sabina hinted to it, I don't care what they come out with, I will not be taking anything. Again, I understand why black people, and that's why we get into the conversation about conspiracy theories. We get into conversation about historical traumas and historical racism that impacts how we view vaccines. We're talking about a lack of representation within the industry, right? Within the science industry. There's not many people that look like us. Why? Because of systemic racism and this idea that's for some of us, a lot of us gravitate towards helping professions. And I think there's a larger conversation that needs to take place with regards to that. And so I don't begrudge individuals, and I'm not here to tell people if they should or should not get the vaccine when it comes out. They're saying that it's on track to make 500 million doses of the vaccine in 2021. And I'll say, listen, I'm on board. I was actually looking up how I can be a part of the 30,000 people who take part in this clinical trial that's taking place, this third phase. And you might ask the question, why? Yes, I know about the Tuskegee experiment where black men were injected with syphilis for 40 to 50 years. Right? 40 to 50 years. It's the reason why we have informed consent and we have to sign all that paperwork that none of you read when you go to the doctor. If we're going to keep it real, let's keep it real. It's the reason why, and some other things, but it's the reason why you sign that paperwork that you do not read. I recognize that, and I saw a brother on the post talk about the lack of empathy, the lack of respect, the lack of belief that black folk receive when they do go to the doctors. We know about the mortality rates of black women in pregnancy. We recognize, and we look no further than the woman who recently died in New York. I believe it was in New York, where she posted about it, right? When she went into labor and she unfortunately died, and she was talking about the pain that she was in. They disregarded what her wishes were and did what they wanted to do, that particular hospital and that medical team. I understand all of that. With that said, I recognize that a lot of these medications that come out aren't necessarily for us. Why? And I was having a conversation about this on a podcast that I was on yesterday, where one fifth of new prescription drugs that have come out within the last 15 or 20 years have negative effects on black folk. They have negative effects on black folk. And some people might be like, see, that's why. And my counter to that is, that's why we need to participate in these trials, right? Because we are going to be prescribed the medication. We know we're number one for high blood pressure and heart disease and a lot of these physical ailments. And they're going to prescribe us this medication, whether we like it or not. And so by participating, it's not necessarily, of course, you're making yourself a guinea pig. Anybody who participates in any type of clinical trial is making themselves a guinea pig. But at what expense? For the expense of the people? I'm here for that. Especially when it comes to something like COVID. Now, the flu is different. I don't get flu shots. Because I understand that most folk, and we know that most folk aren't going to die from the flu. You catch it, you might have it, you might feel uncomfortable, but it's going to go. We, again, have no understanding and idea about this COVID and how this actually works. Now, if this was 30 years from now, and you're telling me that COVID has been in existence for 30 years, for 50 years, then no, I might not necessarily get a shot for COVID. Why? Because we have an understanding of how it works. But the lack of participation, right? Especially when we know that we're most susceptible. When we looked at the deaths in different cities, and I talked about it here on Rhetorically Speaking, Milwaukee comes to mind. St. Louis comes to mind. A lot of the deaths were black folk. I'm sure if you're asking a lot of people who were on ventilators, I know people who lost family members from COVID. If you ask them, right, and say, yo, we got this vaccine here for you. There's a 70% chance, a 80% chance, a 90% chance, a 60% chance that you won't get it if you take this shot. You think these individuals aren't going to say, yo, I'm signing up for it? And so what doesn't help us in this technological era, right, are the YouTubes, are the memes. We got 5G conspiracy theorists. We got Bill Gates and Melinda Gates conspiracy theorists. We got Dr. Sebi conspiracy theorist. I'm focused on the science, right? And that's with me knowing that this is about I don't want to say necessarily about making money, because I think the cure is about the cure and about curing people first and foremost. But just like Martin Shkreli, we recognize that the partners of the scientists, the individuals who are employing these scientists, we know that it's about the bottom line dollar, too. But all that aside, you think that mom who in Florida who lost her son and her daughter in back-to-back weeks, if her children couldn't have participated in that trial, they wouldn't? Of course. Of course she would. Sabina says, do you really believe a lack of participating in trials will be a factor? Of course it will. Of course it will, because people are going to say, it's like they're going to be damned if they do, damned if they don't. Because they're going to be a segment of the population, if we see black folk participating, no, they're giving you syphilis, they're giving you some incurable disease, they're going to turn you into an alien. And then the flip side of that is, damn, I forgot what the flip side of that was going to be. Oh, we didn't participate in it, right? It wasn't made for us, it was made for them. When we have opportunities to participate. And again, I think a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people are not participating because of the Tuskegee experiment. Yes, there's a large historical medical mistrust that exists. But I mean, if I told some of y'all, right, that eating healthy and exercising, like, folk have an aversion to that. Folks have an aversion of going to get a well visit on a yearly basis. So of course I don't expect folk to go get a needle, because it's difficult for you to do the basic things to help and maintain and or improve your life. And so yes, I don't know what the results of the clinical trial are going to be. But if my participation will help black folk, then why wouldn't I? Shit, I deal with white supremacy. I deal with the possibility of me being shot by the police. I deal with me being underpaid in my profession. I deal with all these other factors. But I might get a chance to help my people and help the research that could benefit my people. Why not? If it's my time to go, it's my time to go. God bless the dead. Unfortunately, Dr. Sebi not here to give us some sea moss and grassroot extract to help us get the COVID out. And I don't want people to think that I'm shaming Dr. Sebi. But I think people like the idea of Dr. Sebi more than they've done any research on Dr. Sebi. Because it sounds dope to hear somebody that they've cured some type of ailment. We want to believe in that. We want to believe in that. Let's see what else they're saying. Yeah, Ty says, should schools be open if they're not letting fans at games? Again, I don't think any school should be open. There's no way in hell that high school or college athletes or elementary school or Pop Warner or Pee Wee basketball or Little Tykes hockey or Little Man golf or any of that should be taking place right now. I saw last week, and I might have talked about it. I saw head coaches go down to City Hall to protest because they want there to be football in the fall for their students who are at risk of being a victim or a survivor of gun violence. And I said, how ridiculous is that? I understand wholeheartedly why you want that to take place. But to put them at risk and put their families at risk for COVID due to this idea, and I'm not going to say it's a far-fetched idea because we recognize that gun violence is out of control. It's out of control. But is that the answer? We put a lot of stock, and I'm about to get off on Instagram Live. I got 20 seconds left, so head on over to the Facebook Live or to the YouTube Live. Right? I understand why. I understand their sentiments. But again, we can't be switching risk, trading risk. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. The one thing about major league players is they're compensated fairly well. Even though I don't think they should be taking place, but at least they're being compensated so they can survive. What are these children getting? Besides making other people money. I'm not going to get into them being modern day slaves. But we know that athletes are modern day slaves. And it's worse the lower you go. Some people say it's worse the higher you get. No, it's worse the lower you go. Colleges are making billions of dollars off the backs of the quote-unquote student athlete. If they don't perform, they're gone. Sound familiar? When we talk about remedies, when we talk about interventions, when we talk about solutions for these high school football coaches, this might truly require you to coach. And not just, I'm talking about football, I'm talking about you coach the game of life. This might mean you set up a Zoom call for your students. Again, it's a lot of assumptions that are being made with regards to that, right? Like they have money to get a cell phone. Like they have internet service. Having meetups at the park. Having conversations with them on a daily basis at multiple times a day. Encouraging them first and foremost, not to go out. Might as well not go outside. Because we are in a pandemic. But if you are going to go outside, to be safe. And I'm not just saying wear a mask. If you're living in violent neighborhoods, be mindful about the people who you surround yourself with. And even that doesn't necessarily stop you from being a survivor or victim of gun violence. But telling them to risk their life, risk their families' lives, to play football on any level, that's not it. That's not it. Yeah, Leslie, the coaches went down to City Hall. So, I ain't really got much left. Sheesh, I don't want an hour and 5 minutes. I was rolling. Unless y'all ain't got nothing else. I'm gonna try to play this Umar video again. Let's try it again.
Donation.
It still ain't work. So let's try this Umar video. Let's see if this works. Oh man, they done did a brother dirty. They done messed up my Umar videos, but it's all good. Listen, man, it's been a pleasure. I'm gonna catch up with y'all tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.